Reading. Mazgu lo kos rishon. Translating. The Mishnah. They poured for him the first cup. Explaining. This is talking about the Pesach Seder. Someone pours the first cup of wine. Not grape juice yet. The Gemara assumes wine. Relax, kids. Yours is grape juice. Reading. Beit Shammai omrim mivarech al hayom ve'achar kach mivarech al hayayin. Translating. Beit Shammai say, one blesses the day and afterwards blesses the wine. Explaining. Beit Shammai think you should say Kiddush about the day first and then say the blessing on the wine. In other words, happy holiday first. Then, thanks for the grape juice. Reading. Ubeit Hillel omrim mivarech al hayayin ve'achar kach mivarech al hayom. Translating. And Beit Hillel say, one blesses the wine and afterwards blesses the day. Explaining. Beit Hillel say the opposite order. First say Borei Pri HaGefen and then Kiddush. So the argument is basically, which bracha comes first? Let's move on from the Mishnah and go into the Gemara, which will explain and unpack this machlokes between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Reading. Tanu Rabbanan. Translating. The rabbis taught. In this case, it's a tosefta. Explaining. Whenever the Gemara says Tanu Rabbanan, it means a teaching from earlier rabbis, kind of like the Gemara saying, okay, class, here is an important source. Reading. Divarim shebein Beit Shammai uBeit Hillel ba'seuda. Translating. These are matters between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel during a meal. Explaining. The Gemara is saying that this machlokes between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, two famous schools, are about any kind of meal that has some sort of kedusha, any holiday. It's not only about the first cup at the Seder. Reading. Beit Shammai omrim mivarech al hayom ve'achar kach mivarech al hayayin. Translating. Beit Shammai say one blesses the day and afterwards blesses the wine. Explaining. The Gemara here is just repeating the opinion in the Mishnah, so it can now explain why they think this. Reading. Mipnei shehayom gorem liyayin sheyavo. Translating. Because the day causes the wine to come. Explaining. Why are we making Kiddush tonight? Because it's Shabbat or Yom Tov, like Pesach, Sukkot, or Shavuot. The special day is the reason we are even holding a cup in the first place. The reason why you would have a birthday cake for someone's birthday is because the occasion calls for it. Reading. Ukvar kidesh hayom ve'adayin yayin lo ba. Translating. And the day already became holy, while the wine has not yet come. Explaining. Shabbat starts automatically at sunset, and especially when it gets dark, at Tzeis HaKochavim. But the wine? Someone still needs to go to the kitchen and pour it. So Beit Shammai say the day clearly comes first in order, so you should naturally bless the day first. These are two explanations as to why we should bless the day in Kiddush before blessing the wine. Reading. Ubeit Hillel omrim mevarich al hayayin ve'achar kach mevarich al hayom. Translating. And Beit Hillel say, one blesses the wine and afterwards blesses the day. Explaining. Now Beit Hillel respond with their reasoning. Reading. Mipnei shehayom gorem likidush shetei amer. Translating. Because the wine causes the kiddush to be said. Explaining. You need a cup of wine in order to say kiddush. No cup, no wine, no kiddush at all. So Beit Hillel say the wine enables the mitzvah. Reading. Davar acher. Translating. Another explanation, or alternatively. Explaining. The Gemara is about to give a second alternative reason behind why Beit Hillel says you need to make a blessing over the grape juice or wine first, before the day. Think of it like saying, also, reading. Birkat hayayin tedira, ubirkat hayom eina tedira. Translating. The blessing on the wine is frequent, and the blessing on the day is not frequent. Explaining. You make borei pri hagafen lots of times, but kiddush only happens on special days. Reading. Tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. Translating. When something is frequent and something else is not frequent, the frequent one comes first. Explaining. This is a big rule in halacha. If you have two mitzvot, do the one that happens more often first. So let's say you're in shul and you're reading the Parsha of the week, the Parsha HaShavua, but it also happens to be Rosh Chodesh, let's say, and that comes with its own special Torah reading. Which one would you read first? Well, the Parsha of the week, because the Parsha of the week is more tadir, it's more frequent than the Parsha we read on Rosh Chodesh, which only happens once a month. That's an example of tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. Reading. The Hilchosa Kedivrei Beis Hillel. Translating. And the law is like the words of Beit Hillel. Explaining. Surprise! Actually not a surprise. Almost always the halacha follows Beit Hillel. Reading. My davar acher. Translating. What is the another explanation? Explaining. The Gemara is now analyzing why we need a second reason for Beit Hillel that we gave earlier, which is tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. Reading. V'chi tema hasam tarte v'hacha chada. Translating. And if you were to say there are two reasons there and here only one, explaining. Maybe someone thought Beit Shammai gave two arguments, but Beit Hillel only gave one. If that was the case, we might think that Beit Shammai should be followed, not Beit Hillel, because Beit Shammai has more reasons as to why they're right, and Beit Hillel would only have one. So we might think that the halacha should follow Beit Shammai. Reading. Hachaname tarte ninhu. Translating. Here also there are two. Explaining. The Gemara says, nope, Beit Hillel actually also have two reasons for why they think you should make a bracha on the wine first and then the day. So in this case, when the Gemara uses hacha, which means here, and hatam, meaning there, hatam, there, refers to Beit Shammai giving 2 reasons. Hacha, meaning here, refers to our discussion of Beit Hillel, who also give 2 reasons. Reading. Tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. Translating. When something is frequent and something is not frequent, the frequent comes first. Explaining. That rule we saw earlier is reason number 2 for Beit Hillel. So now, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are on equal footing. They both have 2 different reasons for why they hold what they hold. Reading. V'halacha kedivrei Beit Hillel. Translating. And the law is like the words of Beit Hillel. Explaining. Yes, the Gemara repeats it, just in case anyone was thinking, maybe Beit Shammai this time? Nope. Reading. Peshita deha nafek baskol. Translating. It is obvious because a heavenly voice came out. Explaining. According to another story in the Gemara, a bat kol, a heavenly voice, said that the halacha follows Beit Hillel, which means that the Gemara saying that the halacha is like Beit Hillel is strange. Why would it even need to mention that if we heard from a heavenly voice that we should follow Beit Hillel anyway? Reading. I bais ema kodem baskol. Translating. If you want, you can say, this was before the heavenly voice. Explaining. Maybe this ruling by Beit Hillel that you have to make a blessing on the wine first actually came out before a heavenly voice was heard saying that you should follow Beit Hillel. So the Gemara had to say, oh, and by the way, we do follow Beit Hillel. So it was before this heavenly voice affirmed that we need to follow Beit Hillel. Reading. V'iba yisema la'achar bat kol. Translating. And if you want to say, after the heavenly voice. Explaining. Or maybe it was after a heavenly voice came out saying that we need to follow Beit Hillel, but we still would have a problem. What's that problem? Reading. The Rebbe Yehoshua he, de Amar ein mashkichin bivat kol. Translating. And we follow Rebbe Yehoshua, who said we do not pay attention to a heavenly voice. Explaining. Rabbi Yehoshua famously says, halacha is decided by those who are learning Torah, not by voices from heaven, which is pretty wild when you think about it. So, even if there was a heavenly voice saying, you must follow Beit Hillel and you must make a bracha on the wine first, we know that we follow Beit Hillel because the rabbis and those devoted to Torah study follow Beit Hillel.